in Abu Dhabi have now concluded. Prime Minister Modi's bilateral meeting and all other programs that were slotted with the UAE leadership have come to an end. UAE President Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan will shortly see off Prime Minister Modi, who will now proceed to his next destination of his 5-nation tour. This is, of course, the latest that we are tracking on the broadcast. PM Modi's engagements are going to conclude and he's going to leave very shortly. He'll be seen off by UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan very shortly. All right, it seems that we've got Major General Sudhakarji back with us on the broadcast. Sir, apologies, but there was a slight connection issue. You were, of course, making your point. Please go ahead.
Yeah, there are issues like fertilizer, there are issues like sulfur. Sulfur is a byproduct of any petroleum industry. When you talk about sulfur, you produce sulfuric acid, and that acid is required for refinement of metals like copper, metals like you have nickel, and similar kind of things. And unless sufficient quantum of sulfur oxide or the acid goes into the industry sector, the industry is going to get into a state of hibernation. Or maybe a soft pedaling kind of a thing, which will impact the employment in all the countries, besides the energy security. That has to be taken note of. Also, sulfur oxide is required for fertilizer manufacturing, and that has to go to the agriculture sector. So if there is not a balance to be carried out, then one-sided option to be exercised will also not yield favorable and positive results. So these things have to be seen. Now the data centers are coming up, like country like India. We require helium gas. Without helium gas, you cannot have the cooling process effectively undertaken in the data centers. Helium gas is used for the cooling process not only in the data centers, as also it is required for the semiconductor industry. So where do you get, if Qatar helium industry has totally blocked out and not been able to provide, if UAE can actually come into the rescue, and it will actually give us a lot of dividends to revive the economy, which is experiencing a lot of pressure, whether it is in India or China or Southeast Asia or any other country, this side of the hemisphere. Back to you, Pia.
All right, I'd like to come back to Ms. Mitali Nikore. We had lost your connection earlier as well, but Major General Sudhakarji pointed out what you said earlier with regards to UAE being a core of not just the petroleum industry, but several other industries as well, aerospace, technology, and there were some other outcomes that were highlighted in the official readout, whether it is setting up of 8 exaflop supercompute clusters to boost the AI mission in India, the arrangement on setting up ship repair clusters in Vadinar to advance Make in India, as well as the skill development in ship repair to boost the Skill India mission. How do you see all of these agreements panning out, especially with regards to shipbuilding? Because we've also seen statements made by US President Donald Trump that he seeks to revive the shipping industry in the United States itself.
No, absolutely. And, I completely agree with the Major. And I also want to just build on what he said. See, when you look at some of the strategic sectors that India is also trying to enhance, there are 3 of them which are very critical. The first one, shipbuilding, as you mentioned. The second, maintenance, repair and operations, MRO, in the aircraft industry, because these are all, job creating sectors. And the third one is really around the AI startup and tech ecosystem. Now, all 3 of these are so well established already in the UAE. You have a number of systems in the UAE, financing available. You have venture capital funds, many of whom are looking for ready startups to go and invest in. And where are those ready startups? They are right here in India. So, when they look at this situation, when they look at the opportunities that the Indian market presents, it's a fantastic win 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 because you have some of the technology available in India, some you need. UAE has that know how. Then you have a huge amount of labor supply, which is highly skilled, which is available in India. Some needs to be upskilled, which UAE can do with us. And the third is the capital, which the UAE really brings to the table. The one, mode of investment from the UAE government is also the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund. The Sovereign Wealth Fund is a very important instrument. It's nearly $25 billion already. And they are looking at very critical projects to invest in. And this is what I was talking about when I got cut off, is around renewable energy. As I said, renewable energy is a fast growing market around the world. If UAE's sovereign wealth fund can invest in renewable energy projects and renewable energy companies, and India has some of the leading renewable energy companies in the world. You have Renew Power, you have so many other solar companies which are coming up across the country, which will have a large user base and can also export from here. So, very honestly, there's so much synergy that is there between the UAE economy and the Indian economy. The UAE being a capital-rich, highly skilled economy, and India being an emerging economy which can absorb that capital and the skills and help them scale up in a way that no other country would be able to. And the cultural ties. I keep on saying this because in today's world, there is no truth anymore. We are living in a world where leaders of large nations, especially in the West, can change their mind at any time, introduce tariffs, introduce geopolitical tensions, create wars. But when you have cultural ties which tie together economies, that's today the foundation of solid geopolitics.
Absolutely, ma'am. As you mentioned quite correctly, UAE has the capital, we have the labor force, the creativity, and the startup ecosystems, of course, so more than 1.5 lakh government recognized startups in the country. I'd like to take forward the last point with Mr. Arvind Singh Tajawat, who's also joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us, and for your patience as well. Ms. Nikore, of course, mentioned the flip-flop behavior we see from the West, in particular Donald Trump, especially in his second term. There have been instances where he comes out and says something on his Truth Social platform, and in the next minute he will do a complete 180-degree turn. And we're also seeing, interestingly, Donald Trump is in China at the moment. At the same time, there's also a BRICS meeting being held in India. There was a very important statement given by the Russian foreign minister. He has stated that Russia sees India as a long-term mediator in the war. We see the confidence of the Gulf countries, particularly the UAE. Now we're seeing the statement from Russia as well. What do you make then of the role that India can play? Because India, of course, has its own dealings with Iran, and how do we sort of balance that going forward?
Personally, I believe that the people sitting in the South Bloc might not be very much interested to go for the mediation, particularly when the Middle East going through certain situations. At this moment, I suppose the India should concentrate on his own development. And of course, I would like to go with the opinion of Major General Sahab and Mithali Nicole. Of course, I believe that the India is having a great labor power, and at a contrary, the UAE is having capital. So both can really do something good. And we shouldn't forget that the UAE is the 7th largest investor in India. And I suppose that especially the Adani Saab is having a great opportunity, the country like UAE, where the solar energy and a great establishment can really we can go for, and we have enough opportunity for our youngsters to do the job over there, especially in the technical field. And if I'm not wrong, then I suppose that the UAE policymakers, they really shown their interest to establish some of the new universities there in the UAE, and they wanted to use the Indian expertise. And Italy has also stated and we should be very much careful that what the President Trump and what President Xi Jinping has stated yesterday, that both they are going to the walk along. So the fear is real. Actually, the India should be very much careful if both the countries, because their interests are same, and we shouldn't believe that the United States and the China is having a competition nature, because if we compare the 70 decades and the 80 decades, then I believe that, and this is very much true, that the China has really worked against the USSR. So we shouldn't forget that the United States and the China can go unite. In that conditions, the India will face lots of challenges, and India really needed to work with the new friends and try to find some new friends. And Major General Saab has also stated that the UAE is having that geographical situation where the India can get the goods without any interruptions, and of course we can really believe, and we can really dream a good relationship with the UAE. So let's see the future, that what it happens in coming days.
Of course, that was a sort of bigger picture understanding that I was seeking from you. But I also wanted to ask from you, what do you make of the optics of what we've seen today, right from the F-16 escort for Prime Minister Modi, the ceremonial reception with military honors, the embrace between PM Modi and President Al Nahyan as well, which highlights their bonhomie. So what do you make of all of these optics? What do you think the signals, and who exactly are these signals being sent to?
Probably, I think that the most of the Middle East countries, they have lost their trust in the United States, because when the Iran attacked on these countries especially, then it has proven that the United States is not enough to secure their interest, and cannot provide the security at that large level. And I suppose that the Pakistan is not competent enough to really help these Middle East countries. So I think it's a kind of a gesture by the UAE president, that if they plan for the future, and if they go for the strategic partnership, then of course the interest of both the countries are almost similar. So I suppose that was a sign that really the Indian and the UAE diplomats can work together.
Also, a quick follow-up to that, another one of the key aspects of the MOUs announced is an investment worth $5 billion in Indian infrastructure and RBL Bank and Saman Capital as well. So this is one of the key announcements. What do you make of this? What are some of the critical sectors in which you are expecting the UAE to invest in India?
I think that probably the most of experts are not talking about, but I think that the India should plan to invest more, and India is having that capacity to develop an infrastructure in UAE. At this moment, the most of the development projects are being occupied by the Chinese company, but the government should give a guarantee to those constructions company who is working outside India. In that way, I suppose we can really bring lots of foreign currency, and really we can bring lots of the jobs for the youngsters who is involved in our technical sectors. I suppose from last 10 years, we are following the different education policy, and we are producing engineers at a large level. So these engineers may be employed in those sectors. So I suppose the development sector should be remain one, and then after the energy And I believe that particularly the UAE is also much interested into the defense sector cooperation for the in the defense industries. And Modi Saab is very much aware that the Indian defense industry can only grow if the Indian defense sector is having a market outside. So countries like we and many other countries may provide a host market. So I believe if the diplomats work particularly in that way, then of course we can really achieve a good and fruitful results. Over to you.
Absolutely. And I'd like to rope in Major General Sudhakar ji for one final word. Of course, we've had a lengthy discussion on the UAE, but this is, of course, the first pit stop of Prime Minister Modi's 5-nation tour. His next focus is going to be Europe, Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, Italy. What can we expect on that front? There's a lot of chatter that yes, defense is in focus, supply chains are in focus, and of course, green energy, green infrastructure is also in focus.
First is first, that is the energy security should be the primary issue. We should negotiate with Norway. Norway is one country. I've been to the country, visited the oil rigs and other establishment. This is a country which will be able to give us uninterrupted supply of crude oil. Also, the other Nordic countries, they will be able to help us in the renewable energy. And recently we have had a FTA with the EFTA country.
Yes.
So those FTAs, we need to double down. Make sure that economy, because of the current imbroglio and the conflict in Middle East, does not suffer a setback so serious that it takes our growth rate from projected figure of 6.8 to some dismal figure of 4.2 or 4.9. Because we now need to open up a market, whether it is the Nordic countries or the European. Italy is one of them. As far as Italy is concerned, our defense industry will do well to actually focus on some important aspects with regard to shipbuilding. Shipbuilding, Nordic countries are very good in shipbuilding. That also we can explore. And so I've covered about the energy security, covered about the trade. Our economy has to export targets have to be met. We have a target of $2 trillion by 2030. And in 2026, we have reached a figure of 856 billion goods and services. So the setback that is coming our way looks like this figure of 854 billion approximately of 2025 will be difficult to be achieved. So we need to explore the markets, European markets, Nordic markets, EFTA, if it has been secured, then how quickly can we actually go ahead? We have had FTA with the European Union. We need to actually approach them, see how fast this can be speeded up for ratification. Such like issues are the issues which should be brought forth. And most importantly, Pia, I think the Honorable Prime Minister would do well to discuss the changing the signature of changing global order for the sake of larger stability and some kind of normalcy in the world order. Because some sense has to prevail, because if Europe stops providing the military hardware to Ukraine, there is no way that Ukraine can continue retaliation or counterattack against Russia. By no means am I saying that Russia is doing the right thing. This aggressive stances of stakeholders have to stop. The firing has to freeze. Only then some kind of a tangible ceasefire can be gone about. Similar things here in the Middle East. The Strait of Hormuz is in international waters. We need to mobilize global opinion, bring people together, and by diplomacy and dialogue, put pressure on Iran and let America remove the blockade, let Iran ultimately hand over the status quo as it was prevailing earlier. As far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned, the freedom of navigation must be restored to. Otherwise, it will set a wrong precedent which may be resorted to by countries like China, North Korea, or such like countries elsewhere in the world. So one has to guard against all this, bring about peace and normalcy through the process of diplomacy and dialogue. And ours is the only country which is actually stitching up the West with the East, and the North with the South. I think India is doing a good job, and rather than going in for brokering peace and be a mediator between USA and Iran, this way I think we are playing our mandate in a very efficient and effective manner. Kudos to our leadership and dispensation. Back to you, Priya.
Absolutely, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your analysis and perspectives with us. I'd also like to thank Ms. Mitali Nikore as well as Mr. Arvind Singh Tejawat. On that note, viewers, we're dipping into a quick short break. Stay tuned for more news and updates on the other side.
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी